And before kicking off the event, I'd just like to quickly introduce myself and also our community, the London Bhartiya Women Alliance. So, my name is Mahajan, and I am a second year economics student at King's College London, and I was born and raised in India. I recently founded this organization, London Bhartiya Women Alliance, and our main aim is to support female students in London who come from who come from the Indian heritage, and just equip them with the confidence and skills that they need in order to enter the workplace, be it the corporate sector or the public sector. And we aim to do this through three ways. First of all, we obviously have the Breaking Barriers series, in which we highlight the experience of inspirational female leaders in diverse industries, from consulting to venture capital to human resource management. You name the industry, and we'll be inviting our speaker over in the coming weeks. Next up, I come over to the mentorship scheme, and this will actually be released during the summer and will be targeted towards those university students who start applying for internships and graduate roles this year. So we'll pair you up with a mentor whom you can approach for application advice and guidance. And last but not the least, we aim to host a lot of networking events and other networking opportunities where we all can just network with each other in a relaxed environment and share our experiences and just support each other. But that was it about me. I just quickly stop sharing. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Aekta Mahajan. Thank you so much for joining us, Aekta, despite your busy schedule. To give an introduction to Aekta, Aekta is the global head of the venture capital unit at the Department for Business and Trade. In this role, she leads a large team that attracts overseas investments into British high growth potential companies and British venture funds. And over the past 8 years, her team has attracted more than £1 billion into the UK. Prior to working at DIT, she also worked in the cabinet office where she was working closely with the number 10 and ministers and leading initiatives such as bringing in more social investment in the UK as well as making the government departments more efficient. And before joining the civil service, Ekta was also in the corporate sector, where she started as a management consultant at Accenture, uh, and then moving on to Deutsche Bank, where she was in the global strategy team. For for her exemplary work, Ekta has been recognized many times. For example, in 2012, Ekta was selected as one of the Management Today's 35 Women Under 35 list. And more recently, she was also recognized in the Time Wise Power list. And just to top it all off, and because we have so many, like our main target audience currently is also KCL students, it will be a delight for you all to know that Ekta was an alumni at KCL, and she is currently an executive fellow at the King's Business School. Thank you so much for joining us again, Ekta, and I'll hand over the virtual mic to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And really pleased that you're a Mahajan and went to King's College. So I've got a presentation I want to run through. Okay. Please, you can see my diary. I don't want you to see that. So you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you've already introduced me. I don't really need to do that. You'll see now I'm Mahajan Patel. I'm married to a Gujarati, so a bit more mixed now. Let's try. So this is a bit about me and where I come from. So I grew up in Hounslow. If you don't know Hounslow, it's like 10 minutes from Heathrow Airport. It's a very working class area. You know, it's not like families there. They don't go to Oxford or Cambridge. They didn't study at Eton. It's a very Indian area, you know, where you know, at home the parents would speak in Hindi or Punjabi or Urdu. And the exposure that I had when I was young, and, you know, bear in mind, there was no internet and there was a lack of role models, was very, very low. So back then, most people from our community would work at Heathrow Airport. You know, if you worked at British Airways, especially in that office, you've done really well. If you didn't do that, you'd be working as a baggage handler or doing something, you know, a little bit more manual back then. And that was kind of the world I grew up with, right? You work at the airport, you might work at DHL. Women didn't go very far. You know, you just did kind of the bare minimum. And you know, you mentioned that you grew up in India, and I'll come on to that a little bit because I think there's a specific issue, and I think it's changing in terms of how Indian women are raised at home. You know, we're conditioned to be a certain way, and that way doesn't work in the corporate environment, right? So we start at a fundamental disadvantage, and you know, I experienced this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more through my slides. So yeah, this is where I grew up. So you know, 11, 12, I was just a normal kind of kid, no big ambitions. But then something started to change for me. So this happened basically. I met someone. She was married into our family, and she landed a job at Arthur Andersen Consulting, now known as Accenture. She was this high fly, you know, lady, and she would walk in with Louis Vuitton handbags, and she'd be traveling business class. You know, I'd never been in business class. I was lucky if we went in economy, to be honest. And my eyes suddenly opened up, and I thought, wow, you know, this is also an Indian woman, and she's gone really far, you know. And you know, I was someone that was really quite fascinated by material things. You know, like I grew up in a very normal house, 3-bedroom house in Hounslow, nothing flash, very regular. I thought, you know, I want more. I don't want what everyone in Hounslow has. I want more. And I know in London, Indian women are going far because I was seeing this lady in our family. So this is when I started thinking, okay, I'm going to do something. And I was only 16, 17 at the time, so fairly young enough to kind of navigate my career. Yeah, so this is the reason I started studying really hard. And I want to be honest, right? Because everyone has different motivations. For me, it was two things: handbags and business class travel. So I studied really hard. I got 3 A's in my A levels, which was less common back then. Like now, everyone's getting A, right? But I was, I'm a lot older than you, so it was quite rare back then to get 3 A's. I actually took a gap year and did a gap year placement at British Airways, and then did my undergrad degree at King's College London. I did a degree in business management, studied really hard, but also had a lot of fun. You know, I wasn't one of these geeky kids always in the library. I had a good balance where I studied and I had fun. The one thing I did really, really well, and I didn't know I was doing it at the time, is I was really obsessed with having a perfect CV. So in my head, I knew when I finished university, I want to be that same lady. I want to work at Arthur Andersen, because I know if you work there, you get paid a lot of money. I can buy the nice handbags and I can travel in business class. So I became obsessed with not just having the grades, but becoming quite rounded and having all the CV, having all the brand names. And this is a slide that I wanted to focus on. So by the third year of university, and this is kind of like September, third year of King's College, this is how my CV looked. And remember, you know, I'm just a regular girl from Hounslow, nothing, I have no connections in the world, you know. I did volunteering at Oxfam. Again, you know, when you're from an Indian family, it's not the kind of thing you do. My parents were like, why would you go and work in a charity shop on Saturday? And, you know, I was clever. I knew I needed the name on my CV. I had a summer internship at HSBC. I worked at Bental's over summer holidays. I worked at World Duty Free. I did a gap year placement at British Airways, and I'd worked in the Harrods head office. Now, you know, for someone that's I was about 21, I didn't realize that the others were not doing this. And I get asked all the time, right, by students such as yourself, how can I get a job? how do I get a job? How do I break into banking? How do I get a job in consulting? And they say, I can't get this job because I don't have any experience. So it's a catch-22. How can I get experience if nobody gives me a chance? You know, all of that. And I say, what were you doing all these years, right? In the UK now, you can start working legally when you turn 16. Now, what were all these students doing when they were 16? Because this is what I was doing, right? You can see quite clearly, this is what I was doing. I was working every summer holidays. Summer holidays are 6 to 8 weeks. It's a long period of time. Weekends, you know, this is what I was doing. And I'm not saying that you just work. You know, I would do half a day on a Sunday at Bentals. I would do a summer internship for 4 weeks of my 6 weeks holidays. So this is very important, and this is what sets you apart, because quite frankly, grades don't set anybody apart now, right? Everyone gets A's, everyone gets firsts. But having a CV that is so wholesome and represents different industries means that when you turn up at an interview, you're already 5 steps ahead of everyone else. You have so much confidence and you can give real life examples. So this is kind of where I am. And I think other students, I would really encourage you to work on this. And it's never too late, right? You know, I started at 16, but whatever age you are, start now. I would just, so you know, all my planning paid off. I applied to, you know, it was Accenture. So Arthur Andersen became Accenture, which is a big management consultancy. If you don't know, I got the offer. You know, I hadn't even graduated and I already had an offer. Again, not many people in my year group had this. Most people were so confused about what career they wanted, let alone having an offer. But I had this, and they call it a golden handshake, where they give you £10,000. And again, you know, a girl from Hounslow, an Indian girl from Hounslow at 22, and they say, here's £10,000. A pretty nice feeling, right? And I thought then, like, okay, my planning has paid off. I have the offer of my dreams and I have the job of my dreams. Actually, I will go back. So, sorry, I'm just going to go back to this slide. So I finished university, joined Accenture, and I found it really, really difficult. Like, this was not an easy transition for me. You know, you would think I'd worked in all these organizations, but it, yeah. My work. Okay, ask Nanny. So I'm sorry about this. Meg, this is what I was afraid of, right? I said to you evenings, my son's around. So I found the environment to be incredibly aggressive. It's very, very male dominated. It's ruthless, right? You know, there's no polite way of talking. You do a presentation and your bullets aren't aligned, there's a typo, they will tell you, what is this bullshit you've given me? And I'm this, you know, quite sweet Indian girl, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, how are they talking to me like that? I found it very difficult. And I felt like, and I reflected quite a lot on this, and I realized that so much of this is down to our social conditioning as Indian women in particular. So in the household, and you know, I'm not from a very traditional family. My parents are very like open-minded and modern, but still some of this conditioning seeps in. So, you know, you don't challenge authority. You know, whatever your parents have said, you're told, you know, they say do this, you kind of just do it, right? You don't necessarily argue back with them. You don't have a strong voice. They don't necessarily say develop your own opinions, develop your opinions around politics. Think about your social skills. You know, do you go skiing every winter? Indian families don't go skiing every winter, right? Not unless you're like part of the Bollywood clan, you just don't do it. Think about, you know, how much are you aware of, you know, history? How do you hold conversation with senior partners? What kind of food had you tasted? So we would have client dinners, and I remember having one, and they had sushi, and I'd never tried sushi. And I found the whole experience like quite overwhelming. And I felt like now sushi's everywhere. You've got itsu everywhere. You know, this is a long time back when sushi was considered a bit more of a delicacy. And I, you know, things I'd never done. And I started realizing that I needed to work on myself. And I did. And I found that I started developing a bit more of my confidence. And, you know, if I didn't agree with something, I started saying it. And if someone was rude to me, I didn't just sit there taking it. I would say, no, hang on a minute. You gave me 1 hour to turn around that presentation. So of course there's going to be typos, right? It's 5 o'clock on a Friday. I'm tired. And this is what you asked me for. I didn't have that confidence initially, but I started developing it. So I did 2 years at Accenture. I won't say they were easy, but they were really, really good in me developing myself and, you know, getting a foothold in a really aggressive corporate environment. I then got an offer from Deutsche Bank, again, a German investment bank, very, very male dominated. The last thing you would do then is put an Indian girl, you know, on the trading floor or in the strategy team. Very unusual. And again, I was a little more prepared this time round, you know, but I still never felt comfortable. There's a lot of effing and blinding in meetings. Again, you know, not something I was used to, but I got used to it. What I didn't get used to is just the intense long hours. And again, this is something I will say to young people, you know, they don't appreciate that when you first start your career, you have to put in the hours. You know, you have to put everything else aside and put your career first, because it reaps benefits later. You know, my jobs back then were never 9 to 5. I worked like from 8 till 7. I had flights at 4 a.m. I worked and I worked and I worked because I needed to prove myself. I needed to build my credibility. So I worked really damn hard. I then got offered voluntary redundancy because the Lehman crash happened and every bank was scaling back. And my boss at the time, he was the COO of the investment bank, called me into his office and said, you know, I've worked at this bank for 20 odd years, and I had to because I had a mortgage to pay. You don't have a mortgage to pay, you know, you don't have any children. Go and find somewhere you're going to be happier, because this is not the place if you want to be happy. Especially, it wasn't for me anyway. It was great to make money. You know, I made a lot of money, you know, I won't deny it. But there was a piece of my soul just missing. It felt very empty whilst I was doing that kind of work. I then took some time out and I explored working for government. You know, not something I initially planned to do, but I thought actually I want to explore something different here. It's not as well paid. You know, it's potentially not as prestigious. No fancy offices. No one cares what handbag you've got here. But I'm going to give it a try. So I joined the Home Office, absolutely loved it. They loved me. Like for the first time, you know, when you're at school and you're at top of the class. So I felt like, okay, I'm back at top of the class, because at Accenture and Deutsche Bank, you know, I just about floated. In government, I loved it. The people were kinder. It was a much more relaxed environment. Hours were better. So I was just back in my own element and thriving. I got asked to join the Cabinet Office 2 years, where I worked closely with number 10. I'm going to speed it up. And now I'm at DBT. So all worked out well in the end. So I just wanted to, this is kind of like a summary of my career of, you know, nice things that I'd done, you know, speaking at events, being at number 10 with the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and so on. So 3 things that I just wanted to mention, and I've already covered this, is please plan, plan, plan. Don't sit at home waiting for things to come up. You know, don't make excuses. No one's hiring me. I can't get any work experience. The market's too tough. Plan, be proactive, ask people for help. Like Meg, you approached me, right? I don't know you, but I'm more than willing to help, right? It's just an example.
Exactly.
Work out what's important to you. For me, it was making money, and I'm very honest and open about that. But now I think the generation, it might be more freedom, more creativity. And when you do land those jobs, be the best at whatever you're doing. And of course, like have fun, right? So I've tried to whiz through that. Any questions?
Yes. Firstly, thank you so much for this talk, Ekta. This was so empowering to hear, consider, and I really resonated with what you said about the social conditioning of Indian women. I too am privileged to come from a family that's relatively modern, but there are still some mental constructs that I think I need to unlearn. You said that when you transferred to government, you felt more at home and you felt like like you belonged more. And I feel that I'm going through something similar at the tech clubs where I'm involved with in my university, wherein they're very male dominated. And so I think I need to work extra hard in order to make my presence felt there and to gain their validation and acceptance. However, I want to ask you, do you think it ever gets better? Do you think women ever get acceptance, or is this something that we should stop expecting altogether and just focus on securing that bag?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And the issue with male domination, I have it to this day. Like my team, they're all men. And like to this day, there's times when it's still, if they go for drinks at the pub, now I don't go because I've got a son and I honestly I don't want to go. Um, so I think when you get the titles, they respect you, right? They might not respect me now, but boy, do they respect my title, and the
Yes,
power I hold. Yeah, I know
yeah.
every investor in the world. So you bet everybody wants to speak to me and know me. I don't even carry a business card because everyone will want to know me because of my title. Um, when you feel comfortable, the male domination is never gonna disappear, right? It's
Yeah.
still there for me 20 years on. And I feel like it's always going to be there. You get a bit better and more self-confident about fitting in. But if it
Yeah.
feels like hard work or if they make you feel uncomfortable, then it's not the right place.
No, definitely. I think I'll be working with them. I'll be gauging whether I feel because I feel that I feel comfortable, but I'll definitely be more mindful of how receptive they are of me and my opinions, and yeah, associate with
And you
them
have
in
to
a
shout louder, right?
yeah.
I always
Yes.
make sure. And I didn't used to be like this, but now, even if I don't have a point to say, I will say it because I want to be heard, right? I don't, because all the men, they will make sure their voice is heard. So
Yeah.
now I always make sure I do. It's never gonna be that easy though.
Yeah. I agree. No, I totally agree with the point of shouting louder. I think sometimes we feel that when the nail that sticks out is always hammered in, but I think that's the construct that women should be unlearning.
Yeah, and also how you dress. I really like, nice, pretty girly dresses, and I like wearing here and like pearls. And I always now I try and change because I think, men are obviously in a suit and tie, and you take someone seriously when I'm in a suit and tie. So, if it's an important meeting, I'll put a blazer on and I'll put a shirt, boring outfit on because I feel like they take you a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, agree.
Completely agree.
Any other
Completely
questions? Heck,
agree.
I'm happy to stay on a bit longer if you'd like, if there are other questions.
Yes, definitely. So I personally had some follow-up questions and we had collected just, I'm so sorry for the noise. Is it
No, no,
noisy here? Oh, okay,
no, it's
fantastic. It's
fine.
just flatmates. But yes, just I just had some follow-on questions. But firstly, I really resonated with just like how Muskan mentioned about the social conditioning point. But it was also motivating to hear that it is something that you can outgrow with like practice, and confidence is a skill that you just need to keep practicing and maybe not something. and even if you're like not born with like innate confidence, it's something you can build by building your skills and just like with experience. So thank you for sharing that. But now that you talked about like transitioning from graduate role, from like being a student to your graduate role, even though you had done internships, you felt like it was a unique experience. So just looking back at it and like giving an advice to someone who would be graduating in 1 year, and many people will be graduating this year itself in this call. So what advice do you have for them
So
on
advice
transitioning to a
into
graduate role?
um so obviously, I've already mentioned this. Please work on your CVs, the most important thing. It's far easier now. You have the internet. So, things like applications, it's far easier to get them right. I didn't have the internet back then. Preparing for interviews. I mean, I'm pretty sure now you can even hire coaches. I had to go to Waterstones and buy a book on how to do an interview because, again, there was nothing there. And I also didn't have anyone. The reason,
Mhm.
Meg, I always like, I don't say no to things like this because nobody helped me. I didn't have a brother
Right.
or sister. My parents knew absolutely nothing about this kind
Right.
of corporate world. I had no cousins, so I had no one to help me. So I always think,
Right.
I'm always happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you
And
so
ask,
much.
LinkedIn, right? Message people on LinkedIn.
For sure. LinkedIn for the win. I mean, that is how we connected. So you definitely cannot underestimate the power of LinkedIn. And which actually like brings me to my other question. Like you've talked about like what we should do in university. And I'm not sure if Department of International Trade like has graduate roles or if you work with graduates. But if you've ever observed like or if you've ever worked with women who are in their early career, like at the moment, what are some harmful patterns that you've seen that you think set us back that we should probably work on?
Yeah, that's so it's yeah, I have had a few, and it's always the women that have these. They don't lack ability, they lack confidence. And this is
Mhm.
hard. It's hard. You put like women in these aggressive corporate environments with men from all nationalities, right, from around the world, and many of which whose parents are from the corporate world, right? So they understand it really well. They
Mhm.
have a lot of them have been to Oxford and Cambridge. When I worked at the Cabinet Office, not only was it 100% white, everyone went to Oxford and Cambridge. So, I didn't even have that. I didn't go to Eton. I didn't go to boarding school. So it is hard, but you'll find a way. Ultimately, everyone's human, right? And you kind of bond with them on a one-to-one basis. You go for coffees with people, and after a while, you become more confident about talking about your culture. I started
Mhm.
talking about, oh, I need to leave early. Tomorrow's Diwali. They didn't know what Diwali was. So, I would educate them. I would talk about diversity. I don't make it a big part of me, but, if I feel like it's relevant, I will. Obviously, if you're from India, there's always a little bit of the accent there, right? So, that might come up into question. I currently one of my son's nannies. She's from India and she's very educated, but she will use different words at times. Like she mentioned, "Oh, the cops are coming," which is police. We don't say the word cops; it's police. She was saying, let's paste this, and I said, "Oh no, this." It's let's glue this. It's not let's paste this. So there'll be little differences, and I think it's up to you to make sure you integrate as much as possible. Try to be as British as possible. The less different you are, the easier it is to fit in.
Definitely. No, as an international student, that is a very true point. And like, of course, sometimes you make mistakes, but your British friends are always there to correct you. So that has
Yeah, and
always been
be
helpful.
open to that. Yeah, just be receptive to
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. No,
Um,
completely agree. And this also leads me to my next question. Like you were talking about one thing that us young people should know is that in your early career, you should put in the intense long hours because it pays off
yeah,
in the long term. Which and there have been talks and even research papers about remote work should like people who are in their early career, should they actually work from home? Even if they have the policy of work from home, should they really take
Yeah,
it, or should they be
yeah.
working from office more? Like, what is your take on that for someone who's
Yeah,
in their early
very
career?
good question. Yeah, so I would say being present is so important. And I don't mean, every day turn up in the office, but at least 3 days a week, I would say be in the office and be quite smart, right? If you're in the office, don't sit in the corner, sitting bang in
Mhm.
the middle of where your bosses are. And this is almost a completely separate conversation about, in the workplace, how you should behave. But make sure you're smart enough to be present and make sure you have make small talk with people around you so they know you're visible. It's too easy now in the office even to be quite invisible. So make sure you're visible. Um, yeah, I mean, working remotely is fine. And I sometimes don't do this, but if you are working remotely and you have calls, put your camera on. And
Mhm.
you'll be like, I mean, look at this group here. Everyone switch their cameras off. We all do it. I still do it, right? And my the minister will say, can everyone switch their cameras on? And I don't know why we all love to have our cameras off, but put your cameras on so I can see you. So that's the sort of thing. There's two other things that I didn't say is have really big aspirations. Again, as Indian individuals, we often don't aim high enough.
Right.
We might say, I want to do that, but aim for the sky. I mean, I used to, and my mum would say to me, oh, don't be silly. Just be very realistic. But we have an Indian prime minister.
That
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and I
Exactly.
know for a fact that he would tell people at university that I'm going to be prime minister one day. So everyone on this group, you should know what you're going to do. Are you going to be the next Sundar Pichai? And you should tell people, because what happens is when you tell people, they start seeing you quite differently. They'll say,
Right.
oh, Mehek wants to be chancellor one day. Mehek wants to be partner of, McKinsey. She's smart and she's obviously capable because she thinks she can do it. And everyone sees you differently. So I do this quite a lot. I will say, you know what, I want to get to that level. And I'll tell a lot of people, whether they think I'm
Mhm.
crazy or not, I don't care. But the world also manifests and makes sure that you get there.
I completely agree with that. I feel like unless you are able to like picture yourself and visualize yourself in that role, how will you start working towards it and taking the first steps?
Exactly. Exactly. And you tell your parents, right? And that I always tell your parents, just saying, Mom, one day I'm going to be there. You show them whichever
Hmm.
organization. One day I'm going to get to the board level of that organization. Don't say, I'm going to be the analyst. I'm going to be on the board. And you tell your
Exactly.
friends, and things change, and you start making it happen. And then, yeah, everyone sees you in a different light.
Definitely. I mean, my parents are here on this call,
Oh,
and
they are okay.
luckily,
Good.
yes,
So
and luckily
everyone
my
says it
dad
to
here.
me now.
Yes, exactly.
Hi,
Okay,
nice to meet
here.
you. So
Very
Uncle,
good
we'll make
evening.
sure
This is
Mehek
Vikas
does
Mahajan
well.
this side.
Nice to meet you. So my family now say to me, "Oh, we always knew Ekta would do well. She was so ambitious. And that's what you all want to be. You want everybody to
Exactly.
think, yeah, they always used to say they were going to do that. It's just so
Yeah,
much more realistic when you own that ambition. And like I said, please have big ambitions because
definitely.
I grew up in London, I'm Indian, and I have friends and family. I have uh, family members in the House of Lords. I have friends that
Hmm.
are on the board of investment banks. So I know it's possible, right?
Right.
And whether, uh,
Definitely.
I mean, the only thing I think makes it hard, and this is not relevant, is when you have a child, then whatever ambitions you have as a woman start changing. But otherwise, there's nothing stopping you.
Absolutely. Then I better make the most out of my early career and, like you said, like putting
I
in the
wish
long
I wish
hours and
Mehak to have more mentor like you. We are very
Thank you.
lucky. In fact, Mehak is very lucky, and we wish her to have more mentor like you.
uh,
And we wish her very good luck for the future.
Yeah, no,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to help. And, I'm happy to help. Everyone's happy to help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ekta. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that advice. And actually, this is one big topic at London Bhartiya Women Alliance, the topic of mentorship. Like as and Ekta, please feel free to let me know if we're running out of time, if you're running out of
I'm
time. And
fine. My son hasn't
if
shouted. When he shouts, then I'll go, but he's okay.
fantastic. But yes, mentorship is something that we really focus on, and we'll be releasing our mentorship scheme during June, July, during that period of time. And I was wondering if you've had any female mentors or any mentor whatsoever during your career journey, and how can someone, like, for example, if I'm working in a company like, let's say
Yeah.
KPMG, then how should one go about finding mentors in the corporate sector?
Yeah, so good question. I didn't have them early on. I didn't have them like, in my immediate circle. When I started working, you might have been appointed one, they didn't really help me. I eventually got some good bosses that were like sponsors to me that said, you know what, she's hardworking, she's talented, she's capable, so I'm going to bring her up in the
Mhm.
department. But I've never really had a strong mentor. I never really identified one or found someone that would give me the right time. I mean, now the world's easier. There's, I don't know if you're aware of her, Indra Nui, the CEO of
Yeah,
PepsiCo. So I'm a huge fan of hers, right? If you don't have her book, please buy it, or you watch her YouTube videos. And again, an Indian woman that came from India, made it in America, one of the most powerful women in the world. And she talks so much around, very similar topics to what I've talked about. How do you break in, the social conditioning, all of those small things. So for me, I really look up to her. But I didn't have a formal mentor.
I see. But would you say that in today's landscape as well, like, should people who have just graduated university, should they look for sponsors in their graduate roles?
I think you've got to be careful because everyone is so busy, right? If you look at my
Mhm.
diary, Mehek, it's back to back to back, right? Your brain gets tired. And the
Right.
last thing you necessarily want to do is have a long conversation with a student that is not very clear. So if you want to have a mentor, fine, but be very specific on what you're asking them for. Like you literally need
Definitely.
to have a plan. You need to have an agenda before you even have a
Right.
coffee with them. It needs to be a
Definitely.
bang, 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 and this is what I'm asking for. And they'll value that because then you're not taking up too much of their time.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And actually, now I'll just come to my last question. We have so many students here on this call who are treasurers or presidents in their respective societies, and leadership is something that we're all interested in the topic of. So now that you've transitioned from the corporate sector to the cabinet office and now Department of International Trade, how would you say your leadership style has changed, and like what are the key takeaways from your journey?
Yeah, good question. So I currently I manage a team of about 12 in London, but then we have people based in different offices around the world.
Right.
So then I have kind of indirect leadership over them. I I do it my way, right? I haven't followed a book. I'm very authentic. I like to be a nice boss, and I hope my
Okay.
team would agree. I make the time to understand them. I make sure that, they're stretched in their objectives, and I like to collaborate and ask for their opinion. I value everybody's opinion. I'm not, this is what I want to do, here you go and do it. It's, this is what I think we should do. What does everybody think? Please give me your
Right.
ideas. So I'm very collaborative. And I guess I've learned that. To be honest, I've learned that from bad bosses I've had that didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They were very different, very dictatorial, and I knew I didn't want to be that way. The
Right.
one thing I always do is I say to them, if you've done the work, you put your name on it, because that's one of the things that occasionally would happen to me. I would spend all night working on a presentation and my boss would present it to the client. Where am I? You know? So I make
Exactly.
sure if they've done the work, they get the credit. The one we meet with ministers number 10 all the time. And again, I tell them to go. And I say, no, Toby, you go. This is your area. You love climate tech. You do the meeting in number 10. So I don't take all the glory. I share it across the team.
Thank you for sharing that, Ekta. And I think that is something that all of us students can also take into account. And good bosses and bad bosses is something that we've also had like part of societies. And we obviously learn a lot from the good ones and hope to imbibe that in our future roles too.
Yeah.
But yes, those were the questions that I had. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. And it was a pleasure hosting you. And thank you for giving us your time. I mean, it's 6:44 now and we ran a bit out of
No,
time.
don't
But
worry. Are there any questions from the group? No, okay, I guess not. So, I mean, everybody, connect with me in LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. You can all find me on LinkedIn, or Mehek has my email address. If anyone ever needs any advice or anything, I'm very much available.
definitely. And guys, after this meeting has ended, we will also be uploading this meeting on YouTube. So if you want to go through it again and just like rewatch any particular topics, feel free to do that. And I've also been taking notes. So some key takeaways will also be coming soon on Instagram and LinkedIn.
So 2 things, please, everybody look up Indra Nui, have big ambitions, talk about your ambitions, and then plan how you're going to get there.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Mehek, thank you so much, and hope to see you again. By the way, just my husband runs something called the City Hindus Network, so you might want to join it. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's for city professionals, but it's a fairly similar group to this. It's kind of, they're a little bit older, but you would find some good mentors there.
No, for sure. I will definitely follow it.
The
City Hindus Network. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, look it up.
Fantastic. I mean, I'm part of the Hindu Society at King, so definitely something that I'd be interested in. Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mehek.
Thank you, Ekta.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too. Bye.